You are welcome to yet another episode of HN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. During the R. Kelly New York appeal hearing, his lead defense attorney Jennifer Bonjean made an effort to make the panel of judges understand that her client was never supposed to be charged with RICO and Mann Act violation charges, and she in fact did make very good arguments in this regard such that by the time she was finished, there was a completely new understanding of what the term RICO enterprise actually does mean. For a long time now, since 5 years ago when R. Kelly was indicted, there has been a looming question that has remained unanswered, and that is whether the government did present sufficient evidence against R. Kelly to justify the multiple guilty verdicts and the 30-year sentence that accompanied this series of wrongful convictions. By the time Jennifer Bonjean was done making her appeal brief, however, the whole world was already doubting whether in fact the government even moved an inch close to proving that R. Kelly did operate an illegal enterprise, or that he did in fact violate the Mann Act statutory provisions. When the state attorney was asked to take the stand and explain her argument, she mentioned one or two things before her speech quickly degenerated into yet another mudslinging campaign against R. Kelly, and this only made her sound like another Me Too advocate seeking to bring down black people of power. Instead of speaking on tangible evidence that may have been provided by government to prove R. Kelly was guilty, she instead spoke of multiple bad acts she could think of, even though these were not necessarily illegal actions which she felt would change the appeal judges' minds about who R. Kelly is, and maybe cause them to prejudice him like they did the trial jurors. Tasked to prove that R. Kelly did operate an illegal enterprise, she began to recite events from back in the years of Aaliyah, and attempted to use these to justify that R. Kelly's employees actually did know that the accusers were underage. She mentioned how a woman was invited backstage even after Aaliyah's fake marriage certificate had been allegedly prepared, an event she claims R. Kelly's staff knew about. Meaning, according to her, no fan of R. Kelly at his show should have been invited backstage or given R. Kelly's phone number, even though this is not an illegal act. What we all ought to remember is that there is nothing illegal in inviting females or males backstage at a show for any reason that is not illegal, and sharing a phone number with a woman is in fact not an illegal act. And this is confirmation that in fact if anyone was involved in any bad act according to the allegations that were made by government, it would be R. Kelly alone and not his employees. And this argument also does engulf the packing of his bags, which the government suggests done by his employees was also proof they were recruiting underage girls for R. Kelly's pleasure. All the government was doing was jumbling up issues with the hope to win the appeal judges' hearts into thinking the enterprise theory was proved. Moving on to the issue of whether R. Kelly is guilty of the Mann Act violation charges that suggested he intentionally exposed Faith Rogers and the other girlfriends to an STD. One of the appeal judges actually has serious concerns about this allegation, considering the destination state of transportation is equally intolerant of such acts, and therefore has them punishable by law. California, for example, named as one of these destinations, has very strict laws to crack down on this vice. So she wondered why R. Kelly would be in fact transporting any women out there with the aim of exposing them to herpes without their knowledge or consent. What would have been R. Kelly's motivation to do this in California? And this makes it all a lie by government to frame R. Kelly and deceive the trial judge and jury into issuing a guilty verdict where it was never due. The question that however stood out the most, and one that rattled the state attorney, is when another judge asked what proof the government presented to show that the women who R. Kelly allegedly exposed to an STD had not consented. He went on to explain that if they had actually consented to this, it would not be a crime, considering the crime was exposure without consent. At this point the state attorney fumbled and began to suggest that in fact he did infect them, and this was a crime too, in a way of conceding there was no evidence to prove there was no consent. By choosing to state what was a crime and what was not, the state attorney was deflecting and dodging the question, and so the judge repeated it for clarity. She then answered saying she doesn't think there was direct testimony on that, and in fact added that she believed the jury had freedom to infer again by preponderance of evidence that there was no consent. And this is the real problem here. We have time and again spoken on the issue of using presumptions and preponderance as an approach to finding justice in a criminal case as unacceptable. This is conduct reserved for trial judges handling civil cases, and not federal criminal court proceedings where it is in fact required that any evidence provided is proved beyond reasonable doubt. However, when it came to R. Kelly's case, the criminal court quickly turned civil and used more inference than proof to determine him guilty on matters he should be innocent for. R. Kelly was in fact not guilty for racketeering, and he was clearly not guilty for Mann Act violation, and if only the criminal court had remained a criminal court, we wouldn't be making these videos today as a way to educate the trial judges and the entire world on the laws of this nation and what was expected of a criminal court. Mann disagrees with the government's assumption that if a runner picked up R. Kelly's medication, that would put them in the know that he is in fact going around and exposing women to this STD, and especially without their consent. According to Marion Shearer, I have been following the New York appeal process with detail, and I found that the real problem there exists is the misinterpretation of the law by the trial judge, the jurors, and now one of the appeal judges who keeps insisting that because the statute suggests the organization that constitutes the RICO enterprise may be legal or illegal, even if it's not involved in activities or organized crime as a common purpose, the defendant may still be charged with RICO. Well, that's quite shallow when compared with what the enactors had in mind when this law was created and passed. The part which is confusing the judge is where the law says the organization may be legal or not legal. What they fail to realize is that this part only intended to speak about whether the organization was a registered company or some gang formed on the streets, but did not address whether it should be involved in illegal common activity or not. And this is where the component of common purpose comes in to draw the line between the organizations that are actually rooted in crime and those simply doing their job in their industry. So legal or not legal as the entity may be, to become an illegal enterprise, the members must be sharing in a common purpose of illegality. Mann actually went on to provide an example of a past case where an estate was involved in crime and was only assisted by individuals. This, she confirms, was an illegal enterprise because it was the estate involved in crime and not one individual. In R. Kelly's case, we have a supposed criminal who is also part of a legal enterprise that demonstrated no common purpose to commit a chain of crimes. This does not qualify as an illegal enterprise, and R. Kelly should therefore be acquitted on these charges. And when it comes to the Mann Act claims, the government failed to answer when asked if any proof was presented that these women who were allegedly exposed to herpes were not in the know that he actually had it. And this is because there was no such evidence but simply inference, like the state attorney later confirmed. R. Kelly shouldn't be charged in a criminal case based on inference and preponderance like they did to him. If you wish to take part in a live interview on this channel discussing any of these topics, let us know by emailing us on sashahnnewsroom@gmail.com for scheduling. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say. To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.